Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Marie-Claude Allard. I'm the communication lead for CANU, the Canadian Urban Environmental Research Consortium. This is the fourth webinar from our equity-based climate adaptation project, which is being done in collaboration with CHASE, the Canadian Health Association for Sustainability and Equity, with funding from the FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. I would like to start by acknowledging that the Université de Montréal, where I work, is located on non-treaty Aboriginal territory. This land has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among Indigenous peoples. I wish to pay tribute to those who, since time immemorial, have been its traditional custodians. Before we get started, I would like to remind you to turn off your camera and stay on mute during the webinar. If you have questions during the presentations, please put them in the chat. We will hold questions until the end of both presentations. Also, this presentation will be recorded and sent to all registered participants after the webinar. And now I will pass you on to Kim Perota, the Executive Director of CHASE, who will moderate this session.
Hi, this is the first of our case study webinars. We have scheduled it for 1.5 hours in case we need extra time for questions, but there's a good chance that we'll be finished within the hour. We're excited about this webinar because it features an innovative project that demonstrates how multiple benefits can be gained for our communities when we work across sectors in a creative way. We have two speakers who will work for two of the 5 organizations that have been involved in Chicago's Space to Grow project for several years. Emily Zhang, who will speak first, is the project manager for the Space to Grow project and works for the Healthy Schools campaign. Mariah Gelder, our second speaker, is an associate civil engineer with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. Over to you, Emily.
Great. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out of your days to learn more about Space to Grow from Mariah and myself. It's always really inspiring to be in conversation with folks working in health, community development, and urban planning, and we're excited to share more about this program that we really love and manage out of Chicago. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So Space to Grow, what is it? Space to Grow is Chicago's Green Schoolyards program. And we transform Chicago schoolyards that are primarily asphalt and concrete into vibrant and multifunctional spaces for play, physical activity, learning, and to increase opportunities for our communities and schools to be outside. So there are 3 main program tenets and goals that we operate under. The first one being health and wellness. The organization that I'm a part of, Healthy Schools Campaign, we strongly believe that healthy students are better learners, which feels like a no-brainer, right? So creating those additional spaces that extend the classroom outside of the traditional school building, that get kids outside so that they can be active and build relationships with one another in their environment. That's a huge part of our program and why it started. The second one is around outdoor learning and enabling connections to nature. So all of our schoolyards are based in Chicago neighborhood schools around the city, and schools in Chicago are really central anchors to neighborhoods and communities here. So what better way to connect people to nature than schools that are located throughout our city. And then also supporting school leaders and school administration and being able to take their students outside for that outdoor learning piece. And then finally, which Mariah will speak much more on in her presentation, is around stormwater management. So all of our green schoolyards are designed with green stormwater infrastructure to help mitigate and reduce neighborhood flooding. So want to share a little bit about how Space to Grow all started back in 2013. So Healthy Schools Campaign and Open Lands are 2 Chicago-based nonprofits. HSC, the organization that I represent, works locally and nationally on different health advocacy issues. And our mission is to make sure that health is incorporated into every aspect of the school experience. So like I said, we believe that healthy students are better learners, and we work with school stakeholders across all levels with Chicago Public Schools to create healthier environments where students are able to learn and thrive. Really looking at schools from the lens of the social determinants of health, and addressing those non-academic barriers to learning. So we also have placed a strong emphasis on instilling healthy habits in students, and engaging parents and caregivers as crucial and central to the entire school ecosystem. So at the time in 2013, we had a group of parent organizers and leaders that advocated for the return of daily recess. So if you can believe it or not, daily recess was not across the board at Chicago Public Schools. And if we really think about what students and kids need to thrive in a school environment, it's really that time to just be children, you know? So at the time, we supported parent organizers and groups to help reinstate recess. Once that victory was achieved, we conducted a lot of different site visits and learned through on-the-ground conversations that it was great that recess was reinstated, but that was only the first step, because many school facilities were dealing with cracked asphalt, dangerous conditions, and really outdated playgrounds. So they didn't really have what they needed to take their students outside. And then at the time, Open Lands, which is the largest and one of the oldest urban conservation nonprofits in the United States, they were working to bring school gardens and more nature to these school buildings throughout Chicago. So we connected, our organizations connected to help really start up Space to Grow. And I want to mention Open Lands. They work really closely with us to help manage and support schools after construction. And their work is centered around the fact that they believe that we should be able to connect people to nature right where they live, that you don't have to travel to faraway state parks or out of state, out of country to be able to experience all of the fabulous benefits of nature, that you should be able to experience that right in your backyard and your schoolyard. So that's a little bit about our founding partners. I also want to share and shout out our capital funding partners. So at the heart of this program is a public-private partnership that aims to bring a diverse set of benefits to our communities across Chicago. So four Chicago agencies fund this work and provide ongoing expertise and leadership for this program. Chicago Public Schools, our school district, it is the third largest school district in the United States. The Department of Water Management, the Department of Environment, and the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. So their leadership, expertise, and funding ensures that each schoolyard is able to capture millions of gallons of water annually. We all operate under a partnership where we come together and work together to put on this program. So I want to step back a bit and talk about kind of a definition that we really like to lean on for green schoolyards, because depending on where you go, green schoolyards can look really different to address different challenges and needs. So we really like and point to this definition from the Children in Nature Network that says that green schoolyards have natural elements, family engagement, community access, which is really important for Space to Grow, and all of that in order to expand healthier environments and access to nature, especially for children and communities in historically underinvested and disinvested communities. And I just want to shout out this awesome little man that is I think it really exemplifies the power of this program and being able to connect children with nature, and how these issues are really intertwined with legacies in Chicago of like redlining and uneven patterns of development. And so we love to see that inquiry-based learning is happening at these schoolyards. So from a design perspective, this is generally how our spaces play out, although it differs school to school through our community design process. So there are usually community gathering spaces, outdoor classrooms. Most, if not all, our surfaces are permeable or pitched to areas that can manage stormwater. There are usually I shouldn't say usually, there are always rain gardens and bioswales, active spaces for children. Some of our spaces also have fitness equipment for older members and elders of community. And then if schools show a strong desire to want to grow their own food, vegetable gardens are also included as part of Space to Grow. So I also wanted to share some context about our school district and water agencies, although I'll do the water agencies rather quickly because Mariah will be sharing much more. So Chicago Public Schools serves around 323,000 students across nearly 500 schools or so. 89% of students served by CPS are students of color. 73% come from economically disadvantaged families. And around 235,000 of those students qualify or are enrolled in Medicaid, to just give you a sense of the scale of need. Our district has a $9 billion operating budget, but it's important to note that very little is available for capital improvements themselves, especially for outdoor spaces or infrastructure that can better support this type of work. And in the US, federal funding for school infrastructure, amongst many other things, are currently under attack, and there are ongoing clawbacks at the federal level. And historically, this has already been really limited. So I think this is a strong example of how local action and local government banding together can help make these critical investments that we need. And then our water agencies, our Department of Water Management, which is the city level department that focuses on water delivery and sewer maintenance. And then of course, MWRD, which is a regional agency focused on wastewater treatment and regional stormwater management. It's important to note that MWRD not only serves Chicago, but 128 suburbs as well. And DWM delivers clean drinking water and maintains our local sewer system. So both play such a critical role in addressing our climate challenges around flooding by investing in green stormwater infrastructure alongside more traditional gray infrastructure to help build that resiliency. And then, of course, at the heart of all of this is Lake Michigan, our most precious and vital natural resource and our city's drinking water source. So I want to talk a little bit about how schools are selected to receive schoolyard renovations. So the Space to Grow partners very early on came together to co-develop a transparent selection process that's really aimed at bringing schoolyards to communities that need them the most. Chicago, like many other North American cities, has a long history of investing in schools and communities that already have a lot of resources. So the partners came together to explicitly develop this selection criteria to address that. And schoolyards have to be in communities with high risk of basement flooding. But in Chicago, that can be a lot of different places. And I know Mariah can say much more on this. But so that process is also paired with Chicago Public Schools' recent adoption of a community vetted equity index to help with capital project decision making. That index looks at a few different criteria. They have a hardship index for students, and then they look at the percentage of students, receiving free or reduced lunch, percentage of students who are learning English, first-time English learners, students in temporary living situations, and more. And then also looking at historical funding and what that has looked like across schools. So once schools are go through this baseline analysis, they are then invited by Healthy Schools Campaign and Open Lands to apply to the program. And the application process is really important to us because it's the first step in community engagement and getting to learn the unique priorities and goals of each particular school. So after we receive applications, the partners come together to select a cohort of schools in a given year to go through with green schoolyard renovations. So I want to share a map of the current Space to Grow sites across our city. The ones that say designed are actually finishing construction right now. So we're really excited to be opening those schoolyards next month. And we have recently just started and kicked off our community design process for a cohort of 4 more schools. So after those are complete, scheduled for next year, that'll bring us up to 41 schoolyards across the city. So our community engagement process is central to what we do and how we facilitate design. We know that community members are experts in this, in their neighborhoods and their needs. So it's really about elevating the expertise and knowledge that's already embedded in all of these communities. So each schoolyard is created and designed through an inclusive planning process. We don't just want to hear from the school leaders and administrators. We know that students are and young people in general are usually overlooked when it comes to design and development. So we engage students in addition to school staff and leaders, parents and caregivers, as well as community members in neighborhoods that are close by to the schoolyard. So there are community events, and it's a really iterative process where we're getting to know each school community through a series of introduction meetings and orientations, and then also just meeting them where they're at through like LSC meetings. Those are our local school councils, any parent action committees, and community events, because we want these spaces to really be reflective of the communities that will use them and steward them moving forward. These Space to Grow schoolyards are meant to be shared community spaces that are open after school and on weekends and over breaks. Of course, that hasn't come without its challenges, and we can always share more if there are questions about, that is the ultimate goal, but sometimes that it plays out a little bit differently just because there are certain concerns around crime and safety and other concerns from the school level. But it has really been an education and learning process for all of us. So just want to provide a little more details on our community design process and what we've learned over the years about how to approach community design. So we really aim to provide multiple different avenues and ways for people to share their ideas. Some people might be comfortable doing a phone call or having a focus group. Others might want to be more expressive. So we offer the opportunity for students to, and we really encourage when students get to be designers themselves and think about their spaces in terms of spatially. And so sometimes they create like these adorable dioramas, they'll do art projects and other things to help the designers see what children are wanting in their space, and they're very intuitive about their space, which is always really inspiring to all of us. We also have multiple different digital surveys if that's more comfortable. And then we do a series of open house events and sessions to really get that face-to-face feedback. Something else we learned is to really try to be cognizant of the power dynamics that exist in communities, and making sure that our ultimate goal is to be able to hear everyone's voice and unique opinions. So we try to separate feedback between teachers and their administrators and students, because you're going to be more likely to share if it's a safer space. So we do try to do that. And then I think the last one is really the most important. Building relationships takes a long time, and so does building trust. But through our process, we've learned to really do that early on and consistently, not only showing up when there is good news and good updates to share, but showing up when there are questions or concerns or hard decisions to make is really important for us. So I want to share some before and after photos. This is Cook Elementary School in a neighborhood on the south side called Auburn Gresham. The students at this school and community members always called this Lake Cook. So as you'll see, it's safe to say Lake Cook no longer exists. But I would say this is a pretty good example of how a lot of our schoolyards have looked before their transformation. This is another school on the southwest side called Davis Elementary School in a neighborhood called Brighton Park. And I always like to point out here that the pergolas on the left here were preserved because that was a community art project where they did mosaics and storytelling. It was really important to them. So we learned so much through the community design process, and we're not in the business to come and just tear everything up if there's sentimental and important community value. So that was able to be retained and worked around for this project. And I want to highlight that this school is one that really inspires me because over the summer, there's a parent gardening group that leads gardening, harvesting classes, as well as healthy cooking with their students and young ones to continue that engagement over the summer. And then this is Grissom on the far south side in a neighborhood called Hegwish. It was one of our pilot schoolyards in 2013, 2014. So one of the very first transformations. And then I want to end on one that is officially cutting their ribbon and opening their space next week, actually. So we're really excited for that. This is Ryder Elementary School. And something unique about this school is that it serves a high population of students that are diverse learners and in wheelchairs. So it was really important to them to have sensory experiences and spaces that were inclusive of their ability to thrive and get outside. So you'll see some more nature play here. There's some musical instruments as well. Yeah. And then I want to share a little bit about the schoolyard activation and engagement side of things. So Healthy Schools Campaign and Open Lands, we work together to support schools in the post-construction of these schoolyards. So whether that's hosting community education workshops around healthy cooking and nutrition, or providing hands-on nature-based education, like my colleague Danielle is doing here. This is the Davis group that I was telling you about that leads summer programming in their edible gardens. And then below here, we do community and volunteer stewardship days as well. And then we provide professional development and ongoing trainings for teachers, because we know that it's a big change to go from asphalt and a little bit of play equipment to these spaces. So sometimes it's hard to understand, like, how do I get my kids outside? What are the connections to my curriculum that I can make with these spaces? So we provide some training around that as well. And then we have done some studies in the past with local research institutions in higher ed around the impact of these spaces. And we also released, as a celebration of a decade of this program, an impact report that you can visit, and I'll put in the chat shortly. But we've found through a lot of different research and studies that kids are more active in these spaces. There's more programming, so physical activity is increasing across all ages and genders. There's the opportunity for more positive social interactions. Behavior on the schoolyard has also alluded to less bullying. And then there's been increased opportunities for communities to converse and connect with one another. So we've heard through surveys and interviews that staff, parents, and community members report that the schoolyard has been a really positive addition to their community. So I will pause here. I'm not sure how I did on time. I'm going to stop my share and hand it over to our partner, Mariah Gelder with MWRD.
While Mariah is setting up her presentation, I just want to thank you, Emily. That was an incredible summary of the work you're doing, and the schoolyard transformations are really beautiful. So thank you so much for that. So Mariah, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Emily. That was a wonderful introduction and summary of this amazing program that I'm very pleased to be a part of as well. So once again, my name is Mariah Gelder. I'm an engineer at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. And I will be talking through, giving you a little bit of an introduction into the government entity that we are and what we do, and a little bit of background about why we are invested in stormwater management projects and specifically green infrastructure like these space to grow schools are. So MWRD is a very old and large government entity. We were founded in 1889 to keep our Lake Michigan drinking water clean and safe. And we did this by reversing the flow of the Chicago River by excavating and creating the sanitary ship canal. So this map shows shows our boundaries, which are basically the same area as Cook County, which is the county that Chicago is located in. And we maintain and operate 7 water reclamation plants. So those are located throughout this area. We serve almost 5.2 million residents across those Chicago and those 128 suburban communities that Emily mentioned. So that's in all about 880 square miles of service area. We have the biggest treatment plant in the world, so that's just one of those 7 treatment plants. And all in all, we can treat over 2 billion gallons of combined wastewater, stormwater per day. And that comes to about nearly 500 billion gallons treated per year. So we really have a very wide reach and lots of history and very large infrastructure projects that we have completed. So that kind of summarizes, our main goal is treating the combined wastewater and stormwater in our area. But as I'll go into in the next few slides, how we ended up, getting more involved in stormwater management. All right, so this is a nice diagram that our wonderful public affairs department has put together a lot of these great slides to help explain our sewer system and why we have the flooding problems that we do. So the whole Chicago area is almost all a combined sewer system. And so the way that works is, your homes and any other buildings, they are discharging to the local municipal sewer. And that's within Chicago or within any of those suburban communities. And those discharge to the intercepting sewers that bring all of that combined sewage to the treatment plants. However, when we experience large storms, you can see kind of in this light blue, there's all this extra stormwater that is entering those same pipes, and that can overwhelm what was originally our intercepting sewers, leading to combined sewer overflows. So one of our main goals is preventing those combined sewer overflows into our local waterways. And the way we did this was by constructing what we call our TARP system. That's the Tunnel and Reservoir Plan. So this nice addition to the diagram shows we have these incredibly large tunnels that are, 200, 300 feet underground, which help collect any of that overflow that might be coming in during large storms. So this is great. We have many the whole tunnel system has been constructed already, and part of that is also the reservoirs as well, which contain, have storage for additional billions of gallons of water to just, eliminate any combined sewer overflows into our local waterways. I skipped a few of these nice diagrams just to get to the point, which is even though we have our TARP system now, which, provides a ton of additional storage and accomplishes many of our goals, what can still create problems is that during a large rainstorm, you can see that we might run into a problem with all of these, those older existing local sewers can still get filled up. So if you can picture kind of a bathtub, you've been running the water for a long time, and that drain is trying to drain it all out, but the incoming water is still going to it kind of overwhelms that drainage capacity. So what happens is even though, everything's operating as planned, water is getting into the TARP system and out to those reservoirs for holding. All these local sewers can still be filled up in the case of a really large and quick, flashy storm, which can still lead to these backups shown in red where, water is just going to go to the lowest point it can. And so that unfortunately can be people's basements. It'll be the streets as it's overflowing it, out through those stormwater grates in the street. So that is why we are now investing a lot of money in additional stormwater projects, and get to that screen. So we have a very large and diverse stormwater management program just to help even further minimize all these flooding nuisances and combined sewer overflows. So as I mentioned, we were initially founded in 1889. However, only in 2004 were we given the authority by the Illinois General Assembly to manage the stormwater in Cook County. So since then, we have been involved with developing the Cook County stormwater management program. And even since then, we've just diversified and created lots of different programs and partnerships to help do these stormwater management projects anywhere we can, all throughout the boundaries of our district. So this is just a little map showing all these different types of projects. We have the green infrastructure type projects in green, and actually all those space to grow schools are the tiny little gray buildings that you might see in like the central region, because that's where the actual city of Chicago boundary is as related to the entire county or our service area. This is just a slide I pulled from one of our other presentations explaining a little bit about all these different programs that we run. So we do a stormwater partnership program, a green infrastructure partnership program, and these other ones as well. And so we have our hands in both green infrastructure, but also more traditional gray infrastructure, because we do believe that it's going to be a combination of of both to effectively meet our goals and really do as much as we can to prevent flooding and basement backups and everything like that. A little bit about the Green Infrastructure Program is the group that I'm a part of. So we've been running this. We do basically an annual, and it's an annual process where people can apply with their project ideas. And so we take applications from any public agency within our boundaries. So that can be, a municipality, any of those suburbs or the city of Chicago. It can be park districts, library districts, other school districts. And so they come to us with their ideas for green infrastructure projects. And we provide, after we've selected projects that make the most sense and bang for the buck, we can provide a portion of the funding to construct those. So just, over the almost 10 years, we have selected over 120 projects, and the ones that have, finished to, actually gotten to construction and completion have provided us 13.2 million gallons of stormwater storage. So these projects can often be permeable pavement related. We do a lot of these green alleys, as we call them, the picture here shown on the left, where instead of just that alley drainage probably going into the local combined sewer, instead it can filter through these pavers and into an aggregate, a stone storage basin underneath, and allow it to infiltrate or at least be slowly released back into the sewer system if needed. We can do the same thing with these permeable paver parking lots. And then also we love to do any type of plant-based projects we can. So this is a rain garden project that was done in the village of Franklin Park, I believe, where they took kind of the corners of a block of, several blocks of this street where and did somewhat of a bump out so you can plant a nice rain garden or bioretention area in what would have been just dead space. And this helps collect all that stormwater that's running off the street and let these plants kind of soak that up. And again, there's probably a nice storage layer underneath for that water to sit and infiltrate. So my last few slides are specifically on Space to Grow, why we're all here today. So I wanted to provide a little bit of the information regarding the government to government partnership that allows us to fund these projects and partner on them. So as Emily mentioned, we have done, including the schools that were completed this year, that'll bring us to 41 schoolyards completed since about 2014. And the partnership mechanism we do this through, we are called intergovernmental agreements. So the MWRD has an IGA with CPS, and that is what allows us to contribute funding for the project and also sets lots of other requirements and guidelines, that we're stipulating with our money. So there's been 3 IGAs so far that have gotten us through all of those 41 schools. There was that first pilot phase where we completed 5 schools initially, and then the next IGA we went for a much longer term IGA and was able to complete 29 schools through that. That was, a several year IGA. And we are now on the 3rd IGA, which we're calling phase 3, and that has been just the past 3 years worth of schools, or 2024 this year, and the schools that'll be constructed next year. As Emily also mentioned, there are 3, approximately 3 funding partners. So CPS, Chicago Public Schools, ourselves, MWRD, and then those different departments of the city of Chicago. And the way we've done it is that the city negotiates their IGA separately with CPS, and they're providing funding from their end as well. They typically mimic each other, but our IGA is specifically just between us and CPS. Okay. Now a little bit more on the technical side for any of the maybe design wonks in the room. So, like I mentioned with our other green infrastructure projects we do, that has come to about 13 million gallons of stormwater. So this is a very comparable program in that all 41 of these schoolyards have provided us nearly or about 8.8 million gallons of stormwater storage volume. And the way we calculate this is it's, a big part of it is calculating, the physical storage that's provided. I'll get into that a little bit with these details shown here. But we also look at the soil types that these schools are located on, the existing soil that's underground. Because a lot of Chicago, I mean, a decent portion, especially along the eastern side near the Lake Michigan, can have very nice sandy soils, which means that the water that, can trickle through the surface of the schoolyard has a very good chance of continuing to infiltrate into those existing soils and into the ground and our aquifer. So that is really our kind of our gold standard, is as much of the stormwater that we can keep out of our combined sewer systems. The most we can is best for us. So when we come across these areas with sandy soils, we know that we can design it specifically it'll be a fully infiltrating system, as opposed to one that might have an outlet that, while it would hold back water during times of need, during storms, it would still eventually, a portion of it would still end up in the sewer system. So the way that we're getting this storage in these projects is that, let me just go back to this slide. So, Emily showed a few of these pictures as well, but a lot of them have a really nice big turf field, like this one shown here, and then a great rain garden. And there, even to the right here, is their playground, which has a nice, it's a rubber bouncy surface, but that's actually permeable as well. It has, little gaps if you look closely enough that the water can trickle through there. So under all of those surfaces really is where we can store. We build in, depending on the storage need and how much water is draining into it, you can put in a foot, 2 feet, 3 feet of gravel, depending on your site conditions, of, different stone aggregates to allow room for that water to be stored there. So that is the main way that we get this storage volume, is often there's a big basin of a stone. So all that void space between the stones is where the water can trickle through, and then before it gets into the ground underneath. The other way we can store water is, if you're looking to get even more storage than just what's in the void space of all these stones, is you can put in these chambers. So I tried to include a little bit of detail on those. They're just it's kind of a half circle that sits upside down like this. So everything underneath that half pipe is left open. So as the stormwater comes through the top, this whole thing is perforated. So you just get even more storage space for stormwater. It's a little more expensive, but just depending on your site conditions, you can figure out if it's required for your space. So MWRD, in addition to the funding we provide for these projects, our group reviews the designs to help calculate all this stormwater storage, and also to lend our green infrastructure expertise. We've been doing projects like these, since basically when Space to Grow started. So we're just able to help, lend different things that we're learning across all the different sites that we're doing to these projects. And so those design reviews is an example of something that we write into the intergovernmental agreement. So it's a requirement that, CPS would get their designers to send us the design plans, and then we're involved in the whole design review process. And nowadays, the calculations on stormwater storage is even more important, because our most recent IGA, the last two did not include this, but we have changed up our payment methods so that we are reimbursing for these schools at a set dollar per gallon rate. And then we just provide, we set a cap of like the max percentage that we would contribute of the total cost to build that schoolyard. And so, with each IGA comes the opportunity to kind of fine tune and think of ways to make things a little bit better. So we found the idea with this is that it provides a little bit more flexibility than the funding method of past IGAs, where now we're able to, we could do a much smaller project than typical, or a much larger project, and you know, CPS will just be able to plan accordingly, knowing that we're paying on a set dollar per gallon rate. And my closing slide here, I wanted to throw in a couple more pictures before I get into the notes on the slide. This wonderful concept plan here on the left was an example from the group of schools that was constructed this year. And I really loved this one because they were able to incorporate this really cool stormwater design into this play space. So they have all this lovely painting, painting and striping on the playground that helps. The idea of it is it kind of provides a little story map of the water cycle of the Chicago area. So yeah, I think the architects did a really good job on this one. Just being able to, or trying to incorporate a little bit of the education aspect into the play spaces themselves. Yeah, so I wanted to touch on a few of the challenges, and I think some of these overlap with what Emily mentioned. But the first is probably just that, these are three really large government entities that have come together to make these, to come to get to actually have these intergovernmental agreements and come together to construct these projects. So any of the government folks out there, I'm sure you know how slow, those things can go, and it's just all the more when you have kind of two large entities that need to, negotiate and come together. So each time we're kind of re-upping an IGA can be a long, arduous process, but something that's very important because I mentioned at the bottom of the slide here, it's just a great opportunity to, have room for improvement on each IGA iteration. The second note here is, I think there's, again, just continuous improvement that we can do for, how to design these projects for how kids use the space. So, our nonprofit partners do a great job with the community engagement, and then that kind of translates to the landscape architects, which take the lead on designing the spaces. But over the years, we've learned certain things, just like, maybe we probably shouldn't be putting rain gardens directly behind the goal area of a turf field, because balls are inevitably going to sail past the goal and into the planted area, and kids will inevitably just run right through those. And in those first few years after one of these gets built, those plants can be pretty they would be subject to trampling and all that sort of thing. So there's different design things we've learned over the years for how best to protect all this investment that we've put in. And then, Emily touched on the community access to the schoolyard. So this is an important one for us as well, and something we've, noticed the challenges of over the course of time, and thinking of ways to, keep pushing that as a priority. But we love the idea that these spaces are open to the public after school hours, on weekends, on holidays, just like Emily was saying. And, it's important to us as our, this is part of it is our funding, which is taxpayer dollars. And so these spaces should be open to the community. But yeah, it's always been very enlightening to hear from the school on the concerns they have there. And yeah, always looking for ways to, quell or make that a little bit better for them. And then my last point here is maintenance, 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 maintenance. Maintenance with green infrastructure across all projects, not even, I mean, could be a tiny little rain garden and not just a big project like this, but maintenance is a really tough nut to crack. And CPS has been doing a good, we work with them. We do inspections of these every year and then tell them, mention, any problem areas we see. CPS has taken on a really great contract these days where they're able to provide specialized planting maintenance for these native plants and the bioretention areas. So I think that's a great step forward. And so in short, MWRD, we're really thrilled to be a part of this program. And we'll be looking forward to future IGAs to come. Our Board of Commissioners really appreciates this program too, and it's a great way to bring everyone out at these ribbon cuttings. So that's the little picture I showed here. Just all the public officials from the area come out, and the kids, are really involved in it as well. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mariah. That was great. I have to say, when I've talked about this project, several people have said to me, where does the water in the container go? So you've answered that today. So it either filters into the ground or it goes back into the system. So that is really helpful. And the project really is amazing. So thank you very much. The two of you have done an excellent job. Because of the time, it's 1:53. So we are going to open up for questions, but because I know some people have to go within the hour. So I'm going to ask Emily to come back on the screen. But before we go to questions, I'll just say to people, if you feel like you need to leave right now, I'll just say that we will be sending you to Marie Claude will be sending an email to you after this webinar that'll have links to two different surveys. And one is for a very, very brief one that we'd like everybody to answer, and the other one would take about 5 to 10 minutes, and it's for municipal staff only. And we're really hoping that people will take the time to go through that and provide some information on some of the great work that you're doing in your community, to think about how you might weave equity into some of the climate change adaptation work that you're doing in your community, and to tell us about your data needs, and to tell us if there are ways that the healthyplan.city tool that's been developed by Canoe, if there's ways that it could be improved to support your work. So just say that to anybody who feels that they need to sign off right now, and then invite anybody who still has some questions to please put them in the chat box. And Emily and Mariah are happy to stay on and to answer those. And so I'll just kind of look to see what we've got there. And maybe before we jump into those, I would just like to say that ask you, Emily, and I can't see you at the same time I'm doing the chat box, but Emily, so it would be really helpful to know how the community responds to these schoolyards. Sometimes when you have special schoolyards, there can be kind of damage to equipment. Like, what kind of experience are you having, like both on the positive and the negative, and kind of what are the, how's the community responding to these transformed schoolyards?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that goes back into the maintenance piece that Mariah beautifully summarized, and some of the challenges and lessons learned we've had. I would say for the most part, like overwhelmingly, the school communities really take care of these spaces. And we really attribute that to the community design process. Like, they see themselves in these schoolyard developments because they were engaged. It's not a landscape architect team or a design team that's coming in and providing a few sketches and saying, this is what you want. We really get into the nitty-gritty nuances of that neighborhood, down to like traffic flows, areas that they don't like that they want to activate, So it is a true reflection of community needs, and we found that plays a huge role in the long-term stewardship. You also have a lot of, and we're constantly working on this as well, thinking about like how to get these rain and native spaces into the hands of the school, not only for upkeep, but as a learning opportunity. So helping to stand up garden teams and supporting them with resource development, coming up with watering clubs and templates on, you know, how intensive the watering of the trees need to be, the native spaces, so that they really are set up for success and how they were intended to function in design. We do have, you know, challenges around, I think, littering and sometimes some small instances of vandalism, as you will see in a lot of parks and spaces. But I think it's really about that education and buy-in that's really important to build early on in the process.
To follow up on that, when they did the evaluation for the project over 10 years, was there any measurement of how much the community is using that property out of the school hours? Was that partly captured by the evaluation?
Yeah, I wish that would be really fascinating to see the use, even like mapping out in a given day, like what areas are used
Yeah.
and to what extent. We haven't been able to secure funding to be able to do that type of research, but we are really excited. We're going to be working with University of Chicago to do some other environmental monitoring. This award came in very recently. So kind of seeing outside of the stormwater benefits that these spaces are providing, like what are the effects of green stormwater infrastructure for heat reduction, for
Yeah.
noise reduction and temperature and that type of thing. So we're excited to embark on that and hopefully more impact studies in the future.
That'd be great to see. I have a question here for you, Mariah. Is it possible to make a synthetic field more permeable?
Yeah, I saw that one. Thanks. I mean, I would start by saying that these are synthetic turf fields that are being put in primarily, and they are incredibly permeable. I could dump like a whole gallon of, milk gallon of water on it, and it disappears almost instantly. Um, so I have not looked into and even, any other products that might be even more but that's what I would say on that.
Okay. I have a comment here from Danny Doran, who works with us at Canoe. This is such an inspiring program. Thank you for sharing it. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about the impact of evaluation of the schoolyard, particularly on educational outcomes for students. I don't know if you addressed that, Emily, but if you didn't, did that look at that, like have they seen an improvement in kids' behavior in the classroom or their outcomes in the classroom?
Yeah, we don't explicitly measure that through any of our studies, but we've definitely heard anecdotally from teachers and educators and school leaders that it has been positive in terms of educational performance and outcome. This is very anecdotal, I would say, but it really makes sense if you think about like creating those additional opportunities to take classes outside to create an environment where their students are thinking through like real world inquiries and having different opportunities to do that. We've heard from a lot of mental health workers also at schools that it's been really helpful as an intervention point to take students outside when there are particular crisis or big feelings. So using the spaces also as like a mental health space conducive to social emotional learning, but it would be really interesting for us to look at educational outcomes for sure.
Be hard to measure, but it would be interesting. And I think the two of you have addressed this a little bit, but I'll just kind of, because it's in the chat here. Heat mitigation, is it something that you're thinking about when you're designing the schools? Are you trying to mitigate heat, or does that naturally happen because of the materials you're using?
Maybe I can start and then Mariah, please jump in. The investments are really looking at flooding, which is like a massive and like the most challenging climate hazard that Chicagoans face, but we also know that extreme heat is a huge issue. I think this year's I'm bad at quick math on the spot, but there was a large heat event in the 90s that took the lives of like 500 or so residents, 500 plus. And so I think all the partners are very much thinking about and wanting to push ways and advocating for these spaces to be comprehensively climate ready. So we worked together to update our design guidance this past year to encourage more shade and think about mindful material selection. Because I will tell you, in every community conversation we have, even from the little ones, they're always talking about like, I hide under the slide for shade. Like that's the only place I can go in my schoolyard where I don't feel hot. Or some of the mature or older trees on site. So shade is also an ongoing thing that we're addressing and working on.
So I think we'll close it off there and say thank you to everybody for joining us today, for taking the time to do this. And once again, to you, Emily, and to Mariah, thank you. Wonderful presentations, incredible project, and it really is inspiring to all of us. And thank you very much for doing it.
Yeah, thank you.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for having
Take
us.
care.